Scaffolds. What is a scaffold? An elevated, temporary work platform. Three basic types. Supported scaffolds. Platforms supported by rigid, load-bearing members, such as poles, legs, frames, and outriggers. Suspended scaffolds. Platforms suspended by ropes or other non-rigid overhead support. Aerial lifts, such as cherry pickers or boom trucks. Hazards. Employees working on scaffold are exposed to these hazards. Falls from elevation, caused by slipping, unsafe access, and lack of fall protection. Struck by falling tools/debris. Electrocution from overhead power lines. Scaffold collapse, caused by instability, overloading. Bad planking, giving away. Fall hazards. Falls may occur while climbing on or off the scaffold. Working on unguarded scaffold platforms. When scaffold platforms or planks fail. Protecting workers from falls. If a worker on a scaffold can fall more than 10 feet, protect them by guardrails and/or personal fall arrest systems, PFAS. Guardrails. Install along open sides and ends. Front edge of platforms not more than 14 inches from the work, unless using guardrails and/or PFAS. Top rails, 38 to 45 inches tall. Mid rails halfway between top rail and platform. Toe boards, at least 3.5 inches high. Personal fall arrest systems, PFAS. You must be trained how to properly use PFAS. PFAS includes anchorage, lifeline, and body harness. Fall protection requirements. Can use PFAS instead of guardrails on some scaffolds. Use PFAS and guardrails on suspension scaffolds. Use PFAS on erectors and dismantlers where feasible. The ends of this scaffold are not properly guarded. Falling objects protection. Wear hard hats. Barricade area below scaffold to forbid entry into that area. Use panels or screens if material is stacked higher than toe boards. Build a canopy or erect a net below the scaffold that will contain or deflect falling objects. Overhead power lines. The possibility of electrocution is a serious consideration when working near overhead power lines. Check the clearance distance listed in the standards. Scaffold support examples. Good support example. Inadequate support in danger of collapse. Essential elements of safe scaffold construction. Use appropriate scaffold construction methods. Proper scaffold access. Properly use a competent person. Scaffold platform construction. Platform must be fully planked or decked with no more than 1-inch gaps. Be able to support its weight and 4 times maximum load. Be at least 18 inches wide. This is not a properly constructed scaffold. Scaffold platform construction. No large gaps in front edge of platforms. Each abutted end of plank must rest on a separate support surface. Overlap platforms at least 12 inches over supports, unless restrained to prevent movement. The example on the right, planks are not properly overlapped. Scaffold platform construction. No paint on wood platforms. Use scaffold grade wood. Fully planked between front, upright, and guardrail support. Component pieces used must match and be of the same type. Erect on stable and level ground. Lock wheels and braces. Scaffold height. The height of the scaffold should not be more than 4 times its minimum base dimensions, unless guys, ties, or braces are used. Platform ends. Each end of a platform, unless cleated or otherwise restrained by hooks, must extend over its support by at least 6 inches. The example shown has no cleats. Supported scaffold. Platforms supported by legs, outriggers, beams, brackets, poles, uprights, posts, and frames. Restrained from tipping by guys, ties, or braces. Scaffold poles, legs, posts, frames, and uprights must be on base plates and mud sills or other firm foundation. This example is not supported adequately. Proper scaffold access. Provide access when scaffold platforms are more than 2 feet above or below a point of access. Permitted types of access. Ladders, such as portable, hook-on, attachable, stairway type, and built-in. Stair towers, ramps, and walkways. May use building stairs and come-out window. Scaffold access. No access by cross braces. When using ladders, bottom rung no more than 24 inches high. Can use some end frames. Can access from another scaffold structure or hoist. Of the 2 examples, the one on the right is not an example of proper bracing. Suspension scaffolds. Platforms suspended by ropes or wires. Ropes must be capable of supporting 6 times the load. Train employees to recognize hazards. Secure tie to prevent swaying. Support devices must rest on surfaces that can support 4 times the load. Competent person. Evaluate connections to ensure the supporting surfaces can support load. Inspect ropes for defects before shift. PFAS must have anchors independent of the scaffold support system. Moving scaffolds. Employees can't be on a moving scaffold unless surface is level, height to base ratio is 2 to 1, Outriggers are installed on both sides of scaffold. Employees can't be on scaffold parts beyond the wheels. Competent person must be on site to supervise. Fatal fact: moving a lift. Employee was operating an aerial lift with an extendable boom rotating work platform. The boom was fully extended, and the machine apparently ran over some bricks, causing the boom to flex or spring, throwing the employee from the basket. The employee fell 37 feet to a concrete surface. Don't use shore or lean-to scaffolds. Shore scaffold supported scaffold, which is placed against a building or structure and held in place with props. Lean-to scaffolds supported scaffold, which is kept erect by tilting it toward and resting it against a building or structure. Using scaffolds. Don't work on snow or ice-covered platforms or during storms or high winds. Use tag lines on swinging loads. Protect suspension ropes from heat and acid. A covered scaffold has special wind load considerations. Fatal fact: ice and no guardrails. Laborer was working on the third level of a tubular welded frame scaffold, which was covered with ice and snow. The scaffold was not fully decked. There was no guardrail and no access ladder. The worker slipped and fell headfirst 20 feet to the pavement below. Overhand bricklaying from supported scaffolds. A guardrail or personal fall arrest system is required on all sides except the side where the work is being done. Competent person. Person capable of identifying and promptly correcting hazards. Determines if it's safe to work on a scaffold during storms or high winds. Trains workers to recognize hazards. Selects qualified workers to conduct work. Scaffold inspection. Competent person inspects scaffold for visible defects before each shift and after any alterations. Defective parts must be immediately repaired. Scaffold erection. Scaffolds can only be erected, moved, dismantled, or altered under the supervision of a competent person. Competent person selects and directs these workers and determines the feasibility of fall protection. Training requirements. Train employees on scaffold hazards and procedures to control the hazard. The training must include nature of electrical, fall, and falling object hazards, how to deal with electrical hazards and fall protection systems, proper use of the scaffold load capacities, restrain as necessary. Training erectors. Train employees involved in erecting, disassembling, moving, operating, repairing, maintaining, or inspecting a scaffold to recognize its hazards and the correct procedure to use. Avoid the main hazards of scaffolding: falls from elevation, bad planking, scaffold collapse, getting struck by falling tools or debris, electrocution. Summary. Remember to use appropriate scaffold construction methods. Erect, move, or alter scaffold properly. Protect from falling objects or tools. Ensure stable access. Use a competent person. Train on scaffold construction and the hazards involved with scaffolds. Inspect scaffolds before each shift and after alterations. Determine fall protection requirements. This concludes the section on scaffold hazards.